This young woman, I have watched her start and struggle and worry, and she always comes through. Please welcome the very lovely Avery Maddox.
Thank you very much, Dylan.
No, thank you.
I'm not sure about following Parker, though. That was pretty funny, Parker. So this is not from my solo show. This is something else that I planned on sitting down and sharing a piece of my solo show, and instead, this flew out of my fingertips. So this is called, maybe I should get this right, Cinderella Can Go Fuck Herself. My father adored me. I was his little sidekick. He took me everywhere. Saturdays were special. We went to the auto parts store, the bookstore, and sometimes to Grandma's house. He had a twinkle in his eye when he looked at me, and he called me his little pumpkin puss. On a sunny Saturday in 3rd grade, I went in to work with my dad. The office wasn't open on weekends, but he often went in for a couple of hours. There was a woman working there that day. She had big, long, blonde hair hanging down at the side of her face like one of those Afghan dogs. She wore bright pink lipstick, which competed for attention with her huge peach eyeglass frames. If you haven't guessed yet, we're in the 1980s. The 3 of us went for ice cream. I remember standing there between the 2 of them, licking my chocolate and vanilla swirl ice cream cone. Mom wasn't there. Dad and a strange woman. She gushed over me. I mean, not the regular, like, oh, how cute kind of gush, but the kind of gush that's all liquidy and smelling of aggressive makeup. 2 years later, I came home after school one day. My dad's car cooled in the driveway. He wasn't usually home until after 6. I heard my mom crying. The phone rang. A woman spoke so loudly in the phone that I could hear her aggressive makeup. She demanded to speak with my dad. My mom said, "Tough shit," and slammed the phone down. I remembered the woman at Tasty Freeze. About an hour later, the woman and her husband pulled into our driveway. She had come to convince my father to leave us. Her husband had tagged along. I played my Queen album as loud as I could on my record player and hid in my closet. Freddie Mercury bolting out "Flash, ah," was not loud enough to drown out all the screaming coming from the kitchen. It seemed to go on for what seemed like an eternity. Eventually, it quieted down and the intruders left. My mother told me later that evening that my father had said he could not leave us. He said, I was very sensitive and he knew I would never get over it. He really knew me back then. He still loved my mom, and they were going to try to make it work. That summer, my parents bought a beautiful country home on 30 acres of land in an attempt at a fresh start. Dad promised the affair was over. But the woman at work was relentless. 2 years later, she convinced my father to leave us, and he filed for divorce. Mom and I stayed in the country home for another year, but it was out in the middle of nowhere. So, wanting to be safe, my mom bought a house in town. My father retained the country home, along with the woman and her young daughter, who now occupied my bedroom, the bedroom I'd once had before I moved out. My world was imploding. I was an only child. Maybe the woman's daughter, who was 3 years younger than me, would be like a sister. I'd always wanted a sister. Perhaps the woman would be kind, even a friend to me. Well, the woman worked tirelessly to turn my dad against me, to replace me with her daughter. Over time, my dad allowed himself to be influenced. She convinced him that my tendency to misplace things, my sensitive, dreamy nature, my eccentric taste in clothes, my inability to be organized, they were major flaws, and they were unacceptable. They outweighed my kindness, my sense of humor, even my love for him. He'd always known I was a sensitive dreamer. Now it was held against me. I was suddenly the messy one, the daughter who misplaces things, the black sheep of the family birthed out of the woman he now hated. At one point, I needed a CAT scan because I was having all these migraines. I can't imagine why I suddenly was getting headaches. Do you know how much that CAT scan cost me? I didn't know. But I did know how often his wife was shopping at the mall. He didn't protect me from the woman. He was weak. It was as if she had some kind of power over him. Whenever my mom would try to intervene and stand up for me, it only made things worse. He would pick apart my looks, make fun of my weight. He did everything he could to convince me that I was fatally flawed. This was during middle school. The twinkle in his eye for me was gone. They often invited me out to the country house that I used to live in. I was the teen who was slightly plump, occasionally a klutz, and not sure I was up to snuff. The woman's daughter, on the other hand, was naturally thin. She moved to our town from a tiny little town and instantly was popular and made the cheerleading squad. The woman, she had a gift. She had a gift for hurting me under the guise of being helpful. Sweetie, I accidentally bought this pair of queen-size nylons, and they're too big for me. Would you like them? I looked down to find she had already handed them to me. I had already accepted them. I think I might have thanked her. I took them home and threw them away. One year in high school, I had asked for a professional camera. You know, the cool kind with all the lens attachments and like professional photographer, you can take pictures. Well, it was her daughter who received the camera for Christmas. I watched her open it. Gee, thanks, I didn't even ask for a camera. I opened my present. It was a little red plastic snappy camera. But I was the one who asked for the camera with the lens attachments. Sweetie, we would have bought you the nicer camera, but you lose things. That must be why she kept giving me her old, used shoes. My father finally married this woman during my junior year in high school. She bought her daughter a beautiful, light green demure lace dress to wear in the wedding. They insisted I stand up as well, even though this would mean I'm celebrating their marriage and the end of my family. The dress this woman bought me was a bright, satiny turquoise ball gown. That's ball gown. Complete with crinoline, hoop skirt, gaudy puffy sleeves, and a gaping spot where a bigger bosom was required. I tried it on. I looked like a giant blue pumpkin. Thank God it was too big. My mom and I tried to exchange it. We were told it was purchased off the bargain rack and therefore could not be exchanged. So I borrowed a dress from a family friend and did as I was told. I gave the happy couple a card, but I just couldn't bring myself to buy them a gift. Weeks later, I received a pre-printed thank you for the gift card in the mail with the word gift crossed out with a blue pen. This woman put the ick in wicked. Her hairstyle had not changed since the day I met her. The lips were now bright red, though, and the bronzing makeup left permanent orange smeared smudges in the creases of the phone on the handset. She was perky and wore high heels to the county fair. She was an overflowing barrage of sweet syrup bubbling over the surface while throwing out Bible verses to emphasize her devout faith in the Lord. She was a self-righteous bulldozer, and I was the dirt. I had a mad crush on a boy that year. He was a senior, a year ahead of me. I wrote in my diary about him. I was obsessed. I confided in my stepsister. You can guess who he ended up dating. So much for Prince Charming. By my junior year in high school, though, I had thinned out. The baby fat had magically melted away, revealing curves. I auditioned for the junior play and was cast as a sexy model. In this play, it was a comedy called If a Man Answers. It was about a man who, unbeknownst to him, is being trained by a dog training book that his wife has discovered. We began rehearsals in the big auditorium with the lights dimmed in the audience. I looked out into the darkness. and my skin began to tingle. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. Something big was about to happen. The girl who felt she never really fit in high school or in her new family, she was about to encounter magic. She said her line and popped a cherry tomato in her mouth. And the kids in the audience who were not in the scene laughed. Wait, what just happened? I was funny. I was seen and appreciated for the first time in a very long time. That was the day when the door to freedom opened and I never looked back. I realized that all of the ideas my dad and his wife had about who I was did not have to be who I was. Their criticisms, their perception of me, it simply wasn't true. They wanted me to fit into this square box, and I am not a square. I had found myself. The next year I was cast as one of the leads in the junior play and Marion in The Music Man, and being on stage felt like being home in a way that nothing else ever had. I was transformed from a girl in tatters to a vibrant light in the world. Events fell into place for me. The next thing I knew, I was auditioning for the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Pasadena. And my dad, he was dead set against it, of course. I was awarded a scholarship and invited to the fall session. And I was later asked to join the company after graduation. I fled my life in Michigan because of these cruel, shallow, clueless people. They were oblivious to the real me. I didn't need a prince or a magic spell or glass slippers to save me. I saved myself. Thank you.